Hi, my name is Legarian McDaniel, and I will be discussing African American history and our quest for economic and educational freedom. Today we're talking about how education produces freedom for the African living in America in today's society. Of course, education is key. Education is very important. That's why you have a lot of students, a lot of people who are going to college. They're getting an education, they're getting degrees so they can move into the job field, so they can produce more revenue, more income, and more resources for them and their families and the generations after them. Education is actually a beautiful thing. It's one of those things that can't be taken from you. So we do have to be mindful of that and thankful of that and try to get as much as we can while we're here and promote and try to help anybody that is looking for economic and educational empowerment. But before we dive into that, I kind of want to give a quick little rundown on how education played a role even during slavery. Of course, African people were taken from Africa and brought to America, and they were stripped of their land. They were stripped of their culture, their religion, their way of life, the knowledge of themselves, which is very difficult to build anything on if you don't know who you are. So we want to keep that in mind. I'll speak on that a little bit later. But so those slaves were forced on those boats. The older slaves were killed or led astray or left because you can't get much work out of an older slave, for one, and for two, the older slaves would of course teach the younger slaves what it is they knew and understood, which would probably cause a certain level of rebellion in America while they were trying to become or being made slaves. So they didn't want that. The slave masters wanted complete control of the slaves. So they used their way of life, their religion, and their culture to, in a sense, brainwash the Africans. And the Africans really didn't know where they come from, who they were, how they got there, and they really didn't understand what it is that they were put on earth to do. But there were a few slaves who learned how to read, who were able to teach other slaves how to read. That's where you get the little slogan, each one teach one, each one reach one. So it's a cool little thing that happened. It shows that even during a terrible time, how beautiful education is. And once the slaves began to read and begin to understand, they knew that they weren't in the right place, or they were being oppressed, or they weren't truly free. And after that, of course, you have slaves who begin to gain knowledge of themselves. Because once a person has knowledge of themselves, it allows them to become or have love for themselves. And once you have love for yourself, it allows you to do for yourself. And in doing for yourself, you help yourself and you help others and you help anybody who comes in contact with you. And going after that, we have this transition of economic growth and educational growth, which is a beautiful thing. W.E. Du Bois was one of the first Africans who earned a PhD. And Booker T. Washington also pushed the African-American educational movement, which is very interesting because in that time, not many Africans had any education at all. So to get a PhD or to get certain degrees and bachelors and stuff like that says a lot during that time. It really shows the strength, the endurance, the willpower, the resiliency to overcome and continue to fight for educational freedom. And just like W.E. Du Bois, but after his push for education, it allowed a charter school that's actually in Memphis, Tennessee, not far from Oxford, Mississippi, where they named a charter school right after him. And I'm pretty sure without his push for education, that school would have never been built. And those kids who go to that school or have went to that school and furthered their education may have never got that opportunity. So we have to be mindful and thankful of the sacrifices that the people before us have made for education, and we have to try to push and make it not easier, but more available to anybody who desires to have it, because it is a truly powerful thing. And not only that, James Meredith, excuse me, first African American student to attend Ole Miss, which I very well thought was pretty cool, because it has in a way paved the way for me and many other Africans who happen to live in America get an education at this school. So we do have to be thankful of that and his strength to fight on and continue his education throughout the time that he actually got his education. Because during that time it was very difficult. Racism was at its all-time high. There's still racism, but back then it was very blunt and upfront. So we do have to be thankful and mindful of that. But the reason that education is so important, it allows you to get jobs that you couldn't have got without education. It allows you to move through different ways of life. It allows you to converse with people you might have never been able to converse with. It allows you to travel. It allows you to create businesses for yourself, just like back in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street. This was a place where blacks lived, and they had businesses, several businesses, over hundreds of businesses. They learned how to recycle black dollars. They learned how to invest in themselves. They learned how to create for themselves. So that not only helps the economy, but it allows you to not be dependent on someone else for your educational and economic growth. It allows you to create for yourself. So no matter what, you're able to have some financial compensation, which will allow you to build for you, build for your family, and pass down from generation to generation. Now, in this place, it's consisted of they had hair salons, they had barbershops, they had grocery stores, they had meat packing places, they had retail stores. They had a little bit of everything, which not only helped black people, it allowed black people to have jobs. It allowed them to invest in themselves. It allowed them to create for themselves and bring something positive and helpful to the whole American society. Everybody benefits when the economy is growing. So more education, you have better economy. Better economy, you got better resources. Better resources, you got people living longer, living healthier, living better. So it all goes hand in hand, and we want to make sure that we promote education as much as we can and as long as we can. But I thank you guys for listening to my little presentation, if you will, and y'all have a great day, and stay educated and stay diligent.